Stewart Lee, hello.
Hello, thanks for having us in.
Listen, welcome back. It's always a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
You know how much I enjoy your work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I come on enthusiastically knowing I'm going to be praised rather than blamed, so it's great.
It also gives me, every time you come on, it gives me an excuse to sort of indulge in your sort of stand-up and various other bits of your work in preparation for this. So it's homework that I enjoy.
Oh, great, thank you.
So your comedy vehicle is your TV series.
Yep.
And it's in its second series.
Yeah, it's on tonight.
It's on tonight on BBC Two at 11:20. And just to explain what it is, it's largely half an hour. There's a bit more to it, but it's largely half an hour stand-up.
Well, it's mainly stand-up. It's all on one sort of theme, and it kind of got a beginning and a middle and an end. It's intercut with one short film item near the end every week, and with Armando Iannucci, the writer-producer of The Thick of It, interviewing me in a dark room as if I'm at fault in some way. So that's basically it. Well,
we're going to play sort of a clip of you doing stand-up from the show, from tonight's show. Is tonight's the second one?
Yeah.
From tonight's show. And we'll play a clip of Armando as well, talking to you as well. Well, it's an interesting dynamic. So there's you on stage doing your stuff.
Yeah.
And here's what I found fascinating about our last conversation. You said to me last time that what you do on stage, you're in character.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're talking to Armando, deconstructing what you've done on stage, he's talking to Stewart Lee, not the man in character.
No, sort of. I'm another character there, which is kind of me overstating the case for my own work, you know. But really, the thing was, after the last series, I noticed what people were saying about it, and people said, it comes across as like he's arrogant, sort of high status figure. And I thought, that's interesting, because on stage it's not, because on stage I normally can fabricate something in the room where it's going badly, or I let someone in the audience get the better of me. There's always something to sort of undercut it. But on our last telly show, it sort of wasn't that. So I thought, let's use Armando as this other voice who criticises me and complains about what I'm doing and says it isn't very good and stuff like that. So I think it's sort of a much more rounded programme now.
It's another level of deconstruction. One thing you do in your sets is you deconstruct. So the thing that I typically associate with you is saying, "Oh, that joke went down well in that corner of the room, but you didn't get it over there, did you?" And in this TV show, you address the camera and say, "If you're under 40, that wasn't for you." There's a lot of that, and so this is yet another level of.
Yeah, well, I've had to move it on because there's loads of people on the circuit doing that. What you've just described now, so I've had to make it even more multi-layered and complex. So yeah.
Perhaps next time you should have that. And then have you with Chris Morris deconstructing the chat that you had with Armando, which was deconstructing the stand-up that we've just seen.
Yeah, well, weirdly, Armando ended up doing the chat, but the chat was sort of the result of a week's conversation with Chris Morris, where we were sort of working out what sort of thing that chat should be and who's that character. And it's not clear in the programme whether he's a television controller or a journalist or we were sort of thinking of it being a bit like something you might get in some kind of experimental play where someone's just kind of picked on by someone for an hour. So, there's all bits of all of those people in there, I think.
And Chris Morris is, of course, the script editor on this.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about him as well later. Let's play a clip. So here's a clip from tonight's edition of Stewart Lee's comedy vehicle, BBC Two at 11:20 p.m.
I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like where you are, where I'm all the middle-aged, middle-class parents. Or we leave in the city, we go to the countryside. And they get to the countryside, and they realise there's nothing to do in the countryside. They're absolutely bored out of their minds. Every day, the same thing. They walk out of the house, and they walk to the field behind the house, and they look at the horse that lives in the field behind the house, and they go, "Oh, there's the horse. He's over there. He was over there yesterday. He's moved around." And they walk back to the house and they argue and argue and argue because there's nothing to do, and the marriage starts to unravel and they look for some kind of distraction, but there isn't one because they live in the countryside. And in the countryside you have to book 2 months in advance to get a table at Bella Pasta.
It's always quite hard picking clips from your shows because you take your time. With your material.
Well, I mean, what I tried to do even more self-consciously with the series this time was to write it so that ideally it was impossible to pull anything out of it. I wanted all the bits to relate to each other, and
that I couldn't clip it into.
Well, it's not just you. It's actually very difficult for the trails people, and because they can't really. It's luckily no one's decided to trail it at all anyway. But had they done so, it's sort of really important. In the last series, I I had 5 lines in the last series that I didn't write. 3 were written by Simon Munnery and 1 was written by my wife. And 2 was written by my wife. They're basically one-liner gags. They're not my sort of thing. And it was always them that got pulled out for trails, not my bits. So I don't have that kind of material. Really.
Having structured your show so that it's difficult for people who make TV trails to find a clip for a trail, you can't really bemoan the fact that they haven't made a trail for your show.
No. Yeah, I can't. I've shot myself in the foot. But in a way, it's just because I felt like sort of culture's going the other way. And much as I can see the value of Twitter, I kind of think maybe the 140 character piece of information, it's not necessarily the way everything has to head. So I thought I'd try and make a show that was much longer and more involved than anything I'd done before.
And are you pleased with it? You happy with the work?
Yeah, I'm really, really pleased with it. I think normally normally I keep my head down when I've done things, or I just see all the stuff in them that hasn't worked. But this is sort of what I've wanted to do for 25 years. This series, really, it's sort of really come together really well. I'm really pleased with it. So much so that I don't really sort of mind how it gets reviewed or what anyone thinks about it, because it's done. It's great.
The first series was on, I think, about 10 p.m, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it had sketches effectively within it as well as a stand-up.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have those, and it's on at 11:20.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, deliberate, wasn't it? I noticed. I wondered if it had been like a late bit of scheduling that you'd be annoyed about, but I noticed in tonight's show, whilst you're recording you reference that the show's going to be on late.
Well, it wasn't decided for a year whether to recommission it, and then when it was, the understanding was that the budgets have been cut by about a third across the board on comedy. And the new controller of BBC Two wanted to sort of try and carve out this post-Newsnight slot where they used to put all the American imports like Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm and stuff, see if we could do anything with that. So it was written for that slot, And at one point they offered me 10 o'clock in July on a Saturday, and I said, you know what, it might get more people, but when I wrote this, I very much had in mind it being 11:20 and it sort of being the end of the day and people being sort of tired when they watched it, or it being hard to find. It sort of felt like it should be on at that time. So
I think it's quite a cool slot, isn't it?
I think it's great. Also, there's this whole weird thing going on now when, on the one hand, it was commissioned for 11:20 and we're sort of very much thinking about what is it like to watch something at 11:20 at night. But then on the other hand, half the viewers now watch it at any random time of the day on iPlayer. So you got all the BBC Online and iPlayer departments sort of saying, don't forget, it can be on at any time of the day. So we made quite a funny trail about that.
And is it doing okay on iPlayer?
I think so. I think it sort of doubles its audience, basically.
Does it?
I mean, yeah, we were sort of saying, 35 years ago, 30 million people watched Morecambe and Wise all at the same time, and it drew the country together in a massive act of togetherness. But you can all watch Stewart Lee's Comedy Vehicle alone at any time and be part of no national consensus. But it's interesting how that's changed.
11:20 suits you because you have a very big following now, but you also have, I think, quite a committed following, and they'll watch you at 11:20.
Yeah, well, I think that's why I was sent out like the sort of sacrificial goat into this uncharted 11. The thing that a poor viewer fools might follow me into this slot, But it does seem to work. What I've noticed being around is that the people, it seems to have thinned off the kind of people that drive past me in vans and shout abuse at me. They aren't watching it.
Right.
They sort of people that hate it.
And you got abused, did you, after the first series?
Not really. I'm exaggerating, but I think it's sort of there certainly doesn't seem to be the amount of people watching it that just hate it, because I think it's on too. If you
don't stumble across it necessarily.
Huh?
You would, to watch it at 11:20, you're making a very deliberate choice.
Yeah,
I think when telly's on at 10, there is a degree of flicking around.
You just flick around. Yeah.
People go, what's this? Oh, he's been a bit rude. Don't like him. There must have been a bit of that. People don't really get what you do.
Yeah, and just people are just infuriated by the sort of slowness of it and the lack of any obvious jokes. And actually, one of the things I did was, kind of by accident, I was looking up something. And I found this just torrent of like people just hating me on internet message boards and saying,
look at them, Stewart.
Yeah, I know, but then I thought, I looked at them and I thought, I should do more of that stuff that those people hate, the long drawn out things and the stuff that seems boring, and try and sort of take it as a compliment almost.
That you've done the exact opposite of what a more insecure person would do, which is you look at the criticism and you think, oh, how can I placate these people? Well, you've gone, how can I rile them more?
Well, I started to find it funny because it was so disproportionate. People saying that they hope you die and they'd like to beat you to death with a bat and things like that. And you kind of think, wow, it was only a joke, whatever it was. So
that's what internet
Gonna
forums
go
are for.
further.
They're for wildly exagerating your opinion anonymously.
Yeah.
If you confronted any of these people, they go, "Oh, God, sorry, mate, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
You know, sorry."
Well, it's a weird thing, though. I mean, it never. When I started stand-up, you weren't sort of 20 odd years ago. You weren't subject to that level of analysis. I wouldn't want to be starting out now. I think it could really put you off your game, you know.
Stewart Lee is here. Your thoughts and questions to 85058. Let's get see. Comedy Vehicle is on now, and it's on tonight, 11:20, on BBC Two. Also features Armando Iannucci, writer of The Thick of It and many other things, and Chris Morris, famous for Four Lines and The Day Today, is the script editor. So what is his contribution to your
in the
show?
first series, he sort of helped me put all the film items together. This time, he just sort of talked about tone, really, and ideas, and it was really great having, you know, his brain to bounce that off. He did come up with one or two lines. One of them is one of the ones that I haven't written that would doubtless get pulled out everywhere, where I was sort of thinking of, I was trying to write a kind of parody of observational comedy, you know, where people notice things that everyone's noticed. And Chris's idea was that, have you ever noticed that whenever you see a fish tank in the dentist's or in a public waiting room, there's always a tiny statue of Napoleon in it? There's always a tiny, and it's really great that, because you go, oh yeah, there is, and then you think, it's one of those things that's just close enough to being possibly true to work really well. So he helped round off the edges of everything.
Is your point with a lot of observational comedy, it isn't actually really true?
Yeah, it isn't actually true. But then, so it was fun to try and make up things that sound like they ought to be, but aren't. Yeah.
There's Steve Coogan used to do that character, didn't he? Do you remember he did a bad stand-up comic?
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed?
Duncan Thicket. Really early on, yeah.
That was it. And I'm not saying you've in any way copied. That was not the implication, Stuart.
But you know what?
I
I was so naive as a young man. I saw that character on the same bill as Steve Coogan and didn't realise that it was him. And you know, so where'd you get that guy from? He was mad.
The show. Here's what struck me about the show. It's 3 hours, so 6 episodes, I think, isn't it? So you've got 3 hours.
Yeah.
It is. There's a bit of you and Armando, but largely it's you doing stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 hours of stuff on the go at Christmas before we recorded it. Yeah,
that is a hell of a lot of material.
Yeah, I mean, probably 20 minutes of it was old that I'd done, you know, before. But yeah, well, I knew this was coming and I knew what the format was, so I started on it in May, and I've been doing gigs since May last year where I do kind of hour and a half, 2 hours a night, and in sort of half-hour blocks. But what I'm doing in 2 weeks' time, actually, on the 27th of May at the South Bank in London, I'm doing the whole 3 hours in 3 hour-long chunks.
Is there a little break? You get a break between each hour?
Yeah, for the last time ever. But I mean, in a way, sort of with me, I'm not looking for individual lines. I'm looking for kind of like a locked groove that I can get into, you know, like and sort of improvise around. So it's not quite the same as one of those genius blokes like Tim Vine, who would have to write sort of.
He'd have to write
he'd have to write about 900
because he did
jokes.
short one-liners.
Yeah, you know.